who was the, of course, county exec in Baltimore County, when you had all of the racism and the placism and the spacism from Gwinnett Park to everything else that was going on. But now the Supreme Court has come out to say that they are upholding the collection of DNA, but they said for violent crimes. Whereas this governor and others have come out, such as your attorney general, and I heard that schmuck this morning. On with your former ex-disgraced senator. You know him. You know the one got tricked out, slicked out, kicked out, and dicked out of office. You know him. I don't have to say his name. You know who he is. Come on, let Ganser come on and just have his way. Have his way and try to get some black folk that he can call out their names to co-sign. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But the Supreme Court now has said that the DNA collection is upheld, but they said for violent crime. Your governor, along with your attorney general and others, such as Senate President Mike Miller and head of the House of Delegates Mike Bush, they basically are telling the police that you can go out and collect anybody's DNA that's arrested, even for a misdemeanor. So this is no different than South Africa. This is no different than elements of the Israeli government operating in a criminal behavior toward the people of Palestine to say we want everybody's DNA. And of course, when you know the history of that state police department and their crime lab, the history of Baltimore City and their crime lab and collection of DNA, and they had more of the DNA of employees that worked in the DNA labs than they did of the people's DNA that they collected, because it was so cross-contaminated. And of course, I don't have to give you the history, or maybe I do, of Mr. Kabicki that was working in the state police lab, that he had his resume more fraudulent than anybody else, so much so he committed suicide. But they never turned over those cases or threw out those cases of countless citizens in the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland. So now, knowing the history of the Maryland State Police up there in Pikesville, which shares most of your data with the government of Israel, if you don't know that, with the government of Israel and with many of these labs around the country that are trying to create, supposedly, cures for certain diseases. So they're using your DNA without your permission, and it's being passed on. We'll say alleged, but you know, if they did it with Henrietta Lacks back in 1951, if you know the history of Henrietta Lacks, a little black woman from Turner Station, if they did that with Henrietta Lacks, then what makes you think they're not doing it with your DNA to develop cures using your stem cells from your children, or using your DNA that they're collecting, and of course, to clearly, possibly because of, as we're seeing, police officers that are out setting, and I mean setting meaning entrapping young black men, brown men, red men, and poor yellow men, and perhaps those who are activists and the real patriots. Then this is, of course, hearkening back to the days of the Red Squads that, of course, Pomelo, that no good racist Pomelo. Some of you former police officers, you know what I'm talking about. You just scared to tell what Pomelo did or what he hired you to do or told you to go out and do. But now we see this similar to the movie Minority Report, the pre-crime lab, in which they'll go out and collect the DNA of those, again, that are arrested for the most minor offenses, a traffic offense. And you know, some of you that's been to Central Book, and they already tell you, you're not getting out of here unless you give us some DNA. Some of you brothers be talking about and talking like you're going to kill concrete. They tell you bend over, open that mouth and say, if you want to get up out of here. And you know you've had to give it up. You just don't want to tell that you gave up that DNA, or you had to make that compromise, or you got punked. You got punked, and I ain't talking about with some pumpkin pie either. I'm talking about you got punked, or you got chunked over there and sent your booking to give up that DNA. And then they'll say, well, you can get it expunged if you're found not guilty. But they don't get rid of that DNA. They don't throw that DNA out. They still have that DNA somewhere. And of course, we don't have to mention what they can do to use that DNA toward you as well as your family members once they get one of your family members' DNA. So this country is going backwards right now. When we look at the Supreme Court, look at the Supreme Court decisions that are coming out, and they have still other decisions that will be coming out regarding, again, the Voting Rights Act, along with other hearings or other cases that the Supreme Court will be hearing as it relates to, again, issues of affirmative action. So they clearly are turning back the hands on many of our gains, which means that if you don't stand up then we'll go back to what many of you don't want to talk about, which is segregation. But we still live in a segregated society, and it's only going to get worse in terms of the quickening of the police state and the militarization of many of our police departments and police agencies now around the country, whether you want to confess it or not or address it or not. But you're going to eventually have to face it as well. When we look at, again, the Supreme Court DNA collection. But again, as I've said before, your racist governor and your racist attorney general, Doug Gansler, has basically come out and said, we want everybody's DNA collected. We want everybody's DNA collected, black, brown, red, yellow, and white, for maybe some type of pre-crime lab that they already have set up and have established in this city and particularly in the state of Maryland as well. So again, you tune to the State of the City. Speaking of that, let me talk about this governor's race, as I've been hearing some talk about here. As I've been hearing some talk about this governor's race since the election is not until June of next year, but I've been hearing some talking about it already and heard your attorney general, as I said this morning, Gansler, the schmuck, on, again, with Sugar Bear on his radio program talking about it's too early for him to run, but clearly he was coming on to get some brownie points or some blackie points. Too late to get brownie points. I think Anthony Brown got the brownie points. But was the coming on black radio to say that he has a good track record on, again, violent crime, and he has a good track record on helping Marylanders stay in their homes when we were number one last I checked, and we still in the top 10 for home foreclosures. Now, I know that the Universal Circus just left town. I know the Ringling Brothers, Bonham and Bailey Circus just left town. But clearly, if you ever wanted to see a circus and hear of a circus, this Maryland governor's race is starting to sound more and more like a three-ring circus right now, where you get your current Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, who has never stood for anything except maybe a new suit, new pair of eyeglasses, and maybe a new soundbite to talk about him being a member of the United States military. But when it came to standing up for issues of black folk, standing up for the issues of the middle class, when it comes to him standing up for jobs, you couldn't find Anthony Brown standing up for that. So now you get Doug Gansler when citizens in the city of Maryland, in the state of Maryland rather, homes have been foreclosed on, and you still have these rocket dockets that's getting ready to increase even more now. There's been a slowdown, but there's getting ready to be a quickening in foreclosures. And the middle class has been devastated under this governor. This middle class in the state of Maryland has been devastated. Businesses in this state have been devastated under your current governor, Martin O'Malley. There was a recent report that came out that said that there were at least 7 corporate 500 or Fortune 500 businesses in the state of Maryland when he became the governor. I think they're now down to 4 or maybe 3 or perhaps even 1 right now, which would be Exelon Constellation Energy. So it's not been business friendly. They have not been friendly to small businesses. They've not been friendly to unions. And I mean the lower level rank and file union workers, not the top heavy, head heavy, jughead union presidents. They've been, of course, in cahoots with them. But clearly we see this now. And so now this governor's race, Gansler, according to yesterday's Sun paper, watching for his next move. But again, we also have I believe he's the chief executive officer or the county exec of Harford County, Dave Craig, which had a press conference yesterday. Also, the Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger has come out and said that he may run. Of course, representing the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, metrosexual community, Heather Mazur from Montgomery County has thrown her hat or thrown her rainbow into the race as well. We also have, of course, as I said before, the dark horse. I know you thought the Preakness was over. We also got the dark horse, Anthony Brown, or it could be the light horse, Anthony Brown, that is talking about, of course, now has had his press conference and has even chosen his running mate, his lieutenant governor choice, which is Ken Allman from Howard County. Now, I respect Mr. Allman. Allman, U-L-M-A-N. I ain't seen an Allman since Tracy Allman. You sisters out there know what I'm talking about. Don't get excited. But Ken Allman, who at least cracked down in terms of, again, his budget and cracked down on those that work for Howard County driving cars out of Howard County. He at least looked at how he could put some constraints and some discipline on Howard County. Not like your mayor. Only constraint and discipline she got was a GP, and that didn't show no constraint, and damn sure did not show no discipline in terms of getting that gastric bypass. She couldn't have no discipline on nothing else. So you can't expect somebody who never had discipline now to implement discipline on themselves or on those who they're supposed to serve in terms of, again, being the head of this city. So now we have all of these individuals, all of these names, from Doug Gansler to David Craig to Dutch Rupersberger to now even Michael Steele said that he's looking at running. Michael Steele, the man of steel, if he is that now, if he is that or has been that. But all of the questions that we should be asking as, again, man, at a time when this state find themselves in the economic condition that they're in, then which of them can really provide relief to the citizens in the city and in the state at a time when you need relief, at a time when your fees and everything else are going up? But I know they call them not taxes, but revenue enhancements. Revenue enhancements is your governor call them. But again, for those of you who are Democrats, for those of you who are loyal, blind Democrats, follow the script. Remember when Martin O'Malley wanted to run, and he went and aligned himself with the Kennedys, and the Kennedys said that, well, Martin, you can't run. And it was the Kennedys, Ted Kennedy, along with the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, which are not Democrats, but they're really the corporate crats is who they are. Dinos, Democrats in name only, if I can keep it clear and keep it real with you. If I can put it where the goats and the dogs and the frogs and the snakes and the fakes and the jakes can get it. Not talking about you, Jake. But let me keep going here, man. If you follow the script, the Democrats told everybody else to stand down so Martin O'Malley could run. The Democrats told everybody else to stand down first so Kathleen Kennedy could run. Then they told everybody else to stand down so that Martin O'Malley would be the only candidate running against Bob Early. So we say what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. What's good for the goose should be good for the gander. The Democrats should be saying the same exact thing to, again, those such as Doug Gansler, those such as Heather Mazur out of Montgomery County, the two of them. One live in Bethesda, the other one claimed to live in old liberal Tacoma Park. Old liberal Tacoma Park. So the Democrats really cared for blacks, man, and they wanted to reward you, see? And if they really wanted to show that Maryland was now this progressive state, your governor would do the same as he did for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community during the legislative session last year and this year. He would do the same as he did for the casino owners last year and this year. He would do the same as he did for the so-called new Americans last year and this year, and would tell every Democrat, from the senators to the members of the House of Delegates, to even the Republicans, as they made them some conditions and offered them some positions to get behind their agenda. If they really cared about Anthony Brown, if they really cared about black folk in the state of Maryland and their blind loyalty to the Democratic Party like there's some damn royalty, then they would say, stand down, Gansler. Right now, they're telling Gansler, don't stand down, but he's the George Zimmerman of the Democratic Party. Stand your ground. Stand your ground, but don't stand down. Stand your ground. And right now, just don't announce that you're going to run, but go out there and tout your record as the Attorney General. Go out there and talk about how you went after the gangs. Well, the first gang is in Annapolis that you got to deal with. The first gang is in Annapolis that you got to deal with. The second gang is them banksters that you got to deal with that you cut a deal with. Not one bankster has been tried. Not one bankster has gone to jail. Not one predatory lender has been tried and gone to jail. He cut a deal with him. And the money should have went through the state comptroller's office, Peter Francho. But that schmuck, Gansler, wanted to use it in order to launch his own platform. And this is the same thing we saw during the so-called D.C. sniper case. That down there, then they said he was nothing but a hot dog. You know what I mean? You got O'Malley, who is an outright racist. Gansler just a little bit more and a little bit more. He know how to finesse his racism. He know how to stroke you, is what he does. O'Malley ain't even interested in stroking you. He poke you and choke you, but he damn sure ain't interested in poking you, maybe unless it's one of your women. Ask Sheila Dixon. Ask Stephanie Rollins. Ask Alexis Hughes and maybe some of the other one down there. But we'll say alleged. We'll say alleged. Sade better than y'all. She found out she wasn't much better than you. Even though she was light, bright, and damn near 2 shades white, she found out she wasn't much better than you. But again, you tune to the state of the city, man. Talking about this so-called governor's race And if the Democrats really cared about their black voters, if they cared about their black loyalties, again, then they would tell Gensler to stand down, man. But they not telling them